Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us on your Tuesday. I'm Jeanelle Slade. Well, Billings High School seniors may cross the graduation stage at Metro Park after all. After school district officials consulted with disease control doctors, it looks like more flexibility can be found to give students and their parents a true ceremony. Now, the plan is not entirely nailed down, but we do know fewer spectators will be allowed this year. Q2's Mitch Laggy brings us the details.
At the school board meeting Monday night, Billings School District 2 Superintendent Greg Upham said that he reached out to Billings Clinic's disease control team to see if different accommodations could be made for high school graduation. Upham said the total number of people that will be allowed inside the ceremony is undetermined right now. That number will depend on how safely people can flow through the First Center State Arena while maintaining social distance. The time it takes to sanitize surfaces between ceremonies is also a consideration for attendance numbers. The Billings Clinic's team is working with staff at Metro Park and county health officials to determine seating arrangements for graduates and spectators. Upham said the goal is to stick to the original date for graduation on May 24th, with the possibility of adding a second day if they have to break up the 3 high schools into multiple ceremonies.
I feel more comfortable with the level of expertise that we have to go out and look at the Metro and see just exactly what we can do by allowing for a larger gathering. I can't say how large yet. They want to look at the facility to see, what type of organization that we can put together to ensure the social distancing and maintain safety.
And the plan for graduation is still flexible. Upham said that if COVID-19 cases start to rise in Yellowstone County, the ceremony could become more limited. In Billings, Mitch Laggy, MTN News.
All right, thanks so much, Mitch. Now, there are about 400 students in each graduating class at the 3 Billings high schools. If students would like to opt out of the Metro ceremony, please contact your school principal. Well, Billings police want to put on the brakes and slow down cruising events that have been taking place the past few weeks. Police Chief Rich St. John calls it a developing trend that is concerning and needs to be addressed. Q2's Russ Riesinger is standing by now in the newsroom. Russ, didn't this start as something fun to do during the pandemic?
Yeah, it did, but cruising has been an issue on and off here in Billings for decades. When I was growing up here, I remember as a teenager, police cracking down on burning the point downtown. Later in the 80s and 90s, it became a real issue again on 24th Street West. Police say in recent weeks they're seeing problems reminiscent of that again as hundreds of cars jam the city's busiest streets, many people gathering in parking lots. The chief says he understands people are tired of being cooped up. He says most of them don't create problems, but some do, and that it's becoming a growing concern. Last week there were more than 100 warnings and citations given out, and the police chief says there were also 2 high-speed chases that went out to the interstate.
Private parking lots, we're seeing large raucous crowds. Some people are drinking, there's litter, some people are engaged in disorderly behavior, verbally abusing others, to include patrolling officers. More problematic is the reckless and dangerous driving that has become all too common. Burnouts, brodies, cutting through parking lots, impeding emergency vehicles, and fleeing traffic stops, DUI, all creates a significant danger to everybody.
The chief says that police will be partnering with the Highway Patrol and increasing their presence at future rallies. There's also an ordinance against cruising and loitering that he says police can enforce, but he says he would rather have his officers working on other things, and he hopes that people will tone it down on their own. Jeanelle?
All right, thanks so much, Russ. Well, the essential workers across Montana will get a big display of thank you tomorrow. C-130 aircraft from the Montana Air National Guard will perform flyovers of more than 20 cities and towns to salute workers in the fight against COVID-19. Now, that event begins in Great Falls around 10:15 a.m., where 2 C-130s will fly over Benefice Hospital. One aircraft will then fly east, the other west. Air National Guard officials say the flyovers are part of the Air Force Salutes program. Here in the Q2 viewing area, the plane is expected to pass over Glendive around 11:55 a.m., Miles City at 12:15, Hardin at 12:40. It will fly over Billings around 12:50 and onto Livingston at 1:10 and then over Bozeman. But before the salute from the air here in Billings, that thank you will start on the ground. First responders across the region will share their appreciation for healthcare workers with a parade of patrol cars, fire trucks, and EMS units. First responders will start on 12th Avenue North and North 27th, then travel through and around both St. Vincent Healthcare and Billings Clinic campuses. They will finish down North 27th to Riverstone Health Clinic. If you line up on the street to watch, please adhere to social distancing guidelines. Well, this afternoon, Governor Steve Bullock announced $123 million in emergency grant funding for families, small businesses, and others hit hardest by the COVID-19 pandemic. This first round of emergency grants is funded through the Federal Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act. The funding will be allocated through 9 programs designed to address key COVID-19 issues. Now, those include emergency housing assistance, reducing social isolation among seniors, small business stabilization, and public health grants. Montana was allocated $1.25 billion in CARES Act funds, the federal minimum amount for states. Bullock says the state will use this first round of funding to help determine where it is most needed and will adjust later funding.
And Montanans have made it clear that we must step in and do everything possible to ensure that small businesses can responsibly reopen, that nonprofits can continue to serve our communities, that homeowners can stay in their homes, and Montanans most in need have access to services.
Beginning Thursday at 8 a.m., people can start to apply for assistance at the covidrelief.mt.gov site. After a grant is approved, the state's plan is to send the money as soon as possible. Well, Billings police say they are actively chasing leads in a murder case that left a man dead near Central Park last week. But tonight, charging documents are giving us a better understanding of what led to that deadly shooting. 24-year-old Brett Ness died from a gunshot wound to the head Monday, April 27th, in the driveway of a home on Florine Lane. Now, since then, police have been trying to track down the person responsible for Ness's death. One woman, 18-year-old Raisha Blacksmith, was already arrested in connection with the homicide and charged with felony obstruction. Court documents say Blacksmith witnessed the shooting, allowed the shooter in her car, and then drove the shooter to a home near Terry and Central Avenue. Prosecutors say police are reviewing video footage from a nearby building that shows 5 people getting out of 2 cars before Ness was shot. Well, the U.S. Senate race between Governor Steve Bullock and Republican incumbent Steve Daines is certainly one of the top Senate contests in the country and is expected to be competitive. Now, a new poll from Montana State University shows that's precisely the case and has Bullock actually leading Senator Daines. MTN Chief Political Reporter Mike Dennison reports.
The online poll conducted late last month asked registered Montana voters who they'd choose in Montana's U.S. Senate race if the election were held now. 46% said they would vote for Bullock, a Democrat, and 39% said Daines. 7% said they're undecided, and 6% said they'd vote for someone else. The poll also showed that 70% of Montanans approve of the job that Bullock is doing in response to the coronavirus pandemic. It asked the same question about Senator Daines' response, and just 48% said they approve, but 28% said they don't know. Montana State University political scientist David Parker told MTN News he's not surprised by the results, given the huge amount of publicity Bullock has received during the COVID-19 pandemic. But he notes that Bullock's lead is still within the poll's 4.6% plus or minus margin of error.
I think it's certainly reasonable to assume that the race is probably within the margin of error and too close to call. So yes, while we show a lead, again, it's within the margin of error. So I would say, yeah, this is a competitive Senate race, and I think our poll demonstrates that.
Still, he says the poll is worrisome for Senator Daines and good news for Bullock.
It just demonstrates the information advantage that executives have in times of crisis. So we got an information advantage. People like the job that Bullock is doing. He was already pretty popular. And then let's add the final piece of the equation. Steve Daines has been on TV since early March with television advertisements. Do you know how much Steve Bullock has spent on TV? 0. So that certainly should be a cause for concern.
The poll also asked how Montana voters felt about President Trump and the presidential election. 53% said they approve of how the president is handling the COVID-19 pandemic. But in the fall presidential matchup against Democrat Joe Biden, 45.3% of Montanans said they would vote for the president, and 39.7% said they'd choose Biden, a difference of just 5.6 percentage points. Parker says that probably means Montanans are more open in 2020 to considering someone else besides Trump than in 2016, but that the president remains in good political position in the Big Sky state.
Does this mean that I think Montana's suddenly going to go Democratic in 2020? I don't. Yes, the race is within the margin of error, but if I were still laying down money in Vegas, I'd put money on Donald Trump winning Montana.
And one last thing to mention. It's only May. We have a political eternity until the November election and an unprecedented national crisis still unfolding. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
All right, thanks, Mike. Now you can see the entirety of the MSU poll results on our website, ktvq.com. Ahead on tonight's 5:30 News, we're celebrating Cinco de Mayo with the brand new opening of a grocery store that offers a selection of Mexican goodies. And also in sports, Scott Breen is back out on the diamond, this time with players. He shows us how they're easing back into a summer schedule.
And coming up in weather, a line of showers and thunderstorms will be moving into Montana tomorrow. Just when will they get here? We'll have the answer coming up in a few more minutes.
You're watching MTN News with Jeanelle Slade and Russ Riesinger. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Breen. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.